Well, good afternoon. Hopefully, you guys are getting to this earlier today than you normally do. So today we're covering absolute value inequalities. We're actually going to be looking at 1 and 2 step absolute value inequalities. Thought you guys would kind of enjoy this picture of the redneck swimming pool. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with just a basic one, kind of like what we did with the equations. Okay. Now, with inequalities, they're essentially done exactly the same way with a few minor differences, okay? So we're still going to make two equations. We still need to start by isolating the absolute value, and in this problem it is. So now I'm going to make two equations just like we did before. The difference is this time is that this one is going to be x is greater than 4, just like we seen. Now, the rule is whenever you do absolute values, if you remember, our first equation would be x equals 4. The second one would be negative x equals 4. And then when I showed you guys this, we divided by -1, so you got x equals -4. And that's why we were able to make the solution negative. Well, in this, if I'm dividing by a negative, the rule is you must flip the sign. Okay? So that gives me x is greater than 4 or x is less than -4. All right? And then here is our answer. Okay, pretty simple, not too difficult. So now we go to example number 2. Make sure the absolute value is isolated, and in this case it is. There's nothing outside. So I make my first equation, which is 2x minus 2 less than or equal to 12, and 2x minus 2, and it's because I'm making the answer negative, the sign has to flip. So it's greater than -12. And now you solve. So I add 2 to both sides. I get 2x less than or equal to 14. And now you're going to divide by 2. And you get x is less than or equal to 7. And with this equation, you're going to follow the same steps. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I get 2x greater than or equal to -10. Divide by 2. And I get x is greater than or equal to -5. Now, this is not my answer, however, because when I look at problem number 1, my values are either greater than 4 or they're going to be less than -4. They can't be both, okay? Because if it's greater than 4, it's obviously not going to be less than -4. And if it's less than -4, it's obviously not going to be greater than 4. So this is a or statement, okay? Now on example number 2, if we look at our values and we have x is less than or equal to 7, let's pick a number less than or equal to 7. Let's say 0. Well, is 0 greater than or equal to -5? Absolutely. So this is not an or statement because my values are going to be true for both. So in a case like this, my answer then will be written as one solution, reading left to right, smallest number to largest number. So it's -5 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 7. And if you read these individually, you can tell that they still say the same thing. So this says -5 is less than or equal to x. Well, if I look at this one, the opening of my inequality is facing the x. The opening here is still facing the x. So this would read x is greater than or equal to -5. Okay? And then if I go to the second one, this says x is less than or equal to 7. If I look here, the point is facing the x. It's still facing the x. So this would be my inequality then. -5 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 7. Okay? And this is actually what we're going to call a converging inequality. The first example we did would be what we call a diverging inequality, which we're going to get more into that when we do the graphing part in a couple days. Now you go to example number 3, and this is just an example of now we need to get rid of some stuff on the outside first. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I get 3 times the absolute value of x less than or equal to 9. Divide by 3. I get the absolute value of x less than or equal to 3. And now I make my two equations. X less than or equal to 3, x greater than or equal to negative 3. And again, greater than or equal to negative 3, less than or equal to 3 means my values will be in between negative 3 and 3. So it's negative 3 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 3. And again, this would be what we call a converging inequality. Okay? Absolute value inequalities are, if you felt like the equations were easy to do and to solve for, the inequalities are not any more difficult. The only change is that you have to flip the sign anytime you divide by a negative. That's the only change. Okay? So I hope, make sure again, if you guys have any questions about this, write them down on your notes. Make sure you're doing your steps, coming up with your own steps. And then these notes will be graded tomorrow, as well as the notes from Monday night. And we'll get those put into the computer. And then hopefully you guys are ready for the assignment for tomorrow. Okay, have a great night tonight, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.